This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business That Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. Today's guest, I've been part of a membership for a while, and Sheridan is also a member of that membership, and that's where we met, and we've had lots of discussions about training, and that's what she does. But she's not a trainer, so that's an interesting thing that we're going to discuss. One of the things we're going to discuss today about why she's not a trainer and what she does actually to support trainers. But before we get into that, and Sheridan joins us, just want to remind you all of my book. I will be referring to the 7-step process in that book towards the end of the podcast. So you can get that book from either from Amazon in Kindle or in paperback form, or you can buy it directly from me if you get in touch. If you'd like to support the podcast, then you can buy me a coffee, which helps keeps the wheels in motion, as it were. And if you buy me 2 coffees, I'll send you a copy of my book. So any support in that respect is much appreciated. And there's a QR code there. You can click through straight to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Right, let's get on and bring our guest on today. Welcome, Sheridan.
Hi, Mark.
Looking forward to our conversation, but before we do that, as always, I always give the guests an opportunity to introduce themselves properly, so let's do that first.
Hi, Mark. Thanks very much for having me today. So my name is Sheridan Webb, and I'm the owner and community manager of the Training Designers Club, which aims to make training design quicker, easier, and less stressful, particularly for lone L&D practitioners, whether you are freelance or the only L&D person in your business. And I sometimes think that I misnamed it because, like all things, Mark, and I'm sure we'll explore this, is businesses evolve. So although our foundations are in training design, we don't just talk about training design, we talk about all aspects of L&D, and we support each other in that.
Interesting you say that, because I think business is about evolution, isn't it? And I think training is very much part of that evolution in most businesses. So we can definitely talk about how that's worked in your business to this point. But before we do that, let's just explore that, what I alluded to with regards to that you're involved in training, but actually you're not training yourself, and why that is.
Yeah, it's, I started off in a generalist role way back, doing everything as most people in L&D do. So I did the research, the design, the delivery. But gradually, when I left my corporate job and I went to work for consultancy, they had an unusual setup in that they had designers and deliverers. So it wasn't that you did exclusively one or the other, but you did 80% one. And it turned out, apparently, that I was particularly good at the design, and there were fewer people who were good at the design. And I think it's worthwhile just pointing out at this point, Mark, I am going back here to pre-millennium, around the turn of the millennium. But my experience is in designing live training workshops. I'm not an e-learning designer. That's not what I do. It's all about designing that live experience. So yes, I kept my hand in with the design, with the delivery and the facilitation. And then when I went to work for myself 18 years ago, I took exactly the same approach. So I did a couple of days delivery a month, but most of the time I was designing bespoke, usually management development programs, typically for large organizations. So it was good. You have to still be able to do the things that you're writing into your training so that you know that they work. But I built a career really on writing training for other trainers to deliver. And there weren't that many of us doing it. So it was one of those things. So finding the work was could be quite challenging because people didn't know that was a service. But
Yes.
once you got it, obviously you were kept busy for quite a period of time.
But it makes sense really when you think about it, because a lot of people that are into training aren't really there to design it. They don't. They just want to do the delivery part. So my typical, this is my own experience, and other people might have other different experiences. But most of the trainers I've ever come across are very sort of extroverted, and they just want to deliver, and they almost, it's almost performance for them, isn't it? So they get that energy from that actual performance where they are in front of their trainees, and they do that, and they get the best out of what they do by being that person.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing those sort of people aren't the type of people that want to sit down and really sort of work out what the training actually is. So it actually makes sense to have someone like you in the background doing the bit that they're not designed to do, but then they bring the design to life in the actual training room.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because I am an extrovert, and I did find it quite hard sitting by myself. But our family circumstances meant that I couldn't travel. That was my big restriction when we had children. So yes, but you have to find that joy in other ways as a designer. So it's not about seeing. Everyone talks about seeing the light bulb moment on people's faces. There are similar joys that you can have when you're designing as well. So that, and it's interesting what you were saying as well about sort of they haven't got the patience to sit down and be the completer finisher. I have to admit that is the bit that I really struggled with. I am brilliant at ideas, and I'm brilliant at actually, structuring things and pulling it all together and joining the dots and all of that. But the completer finisher, that was the bit I had to force myself to do, which you probably know that because you've done my motivational map.
Well, we're definitely going to mention that because we talked about it briefly before we sort of went live. So it's definitely an interesting mix of motivations you've got, but they actually are actually in line, definitely in line with what you do. So I want to just quickly go back to e-learning and in-person learning. So I think there's a bit of a struggle going on at the moment, isn't there, where people are trying to find the right way to deliver training, whether it's online or in person. And I suppose different people, the trainers, prefer different ways. But ultimately, it's about the learner, isn't it? It's where how they get the best experience and how they actually learn from the experience.
It is. I mean, that's obviously where you need to start. Well, actually, no. Where you need to start is with the aim. So, what is the training trying to achieve? Who is that training for? And then, how can you best give them what they need? And some topics obviously work brilliantly with e-learning. It's a great format, and others, no matter how great the e-learning is, they're never quite going to land. So, I mean, it's 4 years ago now, but one of the few good things to come out of the pandemic was blended learning actually became the norm. And I think that is the key because there is a space for all different types of learning. And when we put it all together in the right way, that's when you're really going to see a difference. And the pen is really going to drop, and people are going to apply what they learn and change their behaviour and make a difference back at work. So, hurrah for blended learning.
Indeed, indeed. And so, what about the actual design then? What are the important elements that you see that you provide that are important with regards to the experience that training has to deliver on?
Well, it's interesting, Mark, because when the pandemic did happen, and all the trainers that we know were sort of going, "That's it, I'm out of a job. I can't do what I needed to do." As a designer, that happened to me as well because all the people I was designing for were suddenly told, "Stop delivering, start designing." So I lost my work too. But what did happen was that I was able to very quickly rewrite. I have a series of ready written training materials called Power Hour. So I was very quickly able to rewrite those for virtual training, and to me it was easy. But all these other people are saying I can't deliver unless I'm face to face. To go back to your question, because I know we're short on time and I do waffle sometimes, is it I realised that people did not design properly. So so if you're familiar with the ADDIE process or the 5Ds, so ADDIE is analysis, design, which is top level design, develop, which is detailed design, implement and evaluate. And it became very clear very quickly that the vast majority of trainers just completely ignored that second D. So they did their analysis, they did their top level design, and then they went out and delivered it. So they delivered it with 2 sheets of paper. I've got the skills, I've got the ideas in my head, but you couldn't do that when you're delivering virtually. You have to plan it in a lot more detail, which, of course, as I designed for other facilitators, I'd always done that. That was second nature to me. So I ran a course, and it was called Designing for Digital Delivery. And it was over Zoom, obviously, and that was incredibly popular with live trainers who needed to make the switch. So I still do offer training design courses. So design training in 6 simple steps. I encourage people how to incorporate accelerated learning techniques with Master. I've also got a few others, and of course I've got one on using AI to assist your training design as well, because when, as you said, when you are a facilitator, that's what you love, that's what you're good at, you rely on those skills, but then you're kind of designing it as you deliver it every single time, and that's got to be exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the AI word there, or two letters, I should say. We're going to come back to that because I'm going to be interested to see what you think the future of training is with regards to that.
We
Um,
can't ignore it.
we can't, definitely not with anything in workplace. AI is going to be influencing pretty much everything. But what I was going to ask you about was regards to one comment I was going to make was obviously with the pandemic, what we found was that technology actually caught up with the situation, which has actually helped training with regards to the tech that's available now, isn't it? Because before it was difficult to get people to go on a Zoom meeting or a webinar or whatever. But now people just take it as just one part and parcel of the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's opened up so many doors. It's mainly, well, I say it's made training so much more accessible to so many more people, which overall it has. But I do have to give a little shout out for those few people who sadly still don't have decent broadband services.
Right,
It's something
yes.
we still can't assume that everyone can access it.
Yes, I'm sure that's frustration for some that just can't get that the speed that they need to deliver their services. Yes, and with regards to the way you deliver, then I know that you have a community that you set up. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about why you did that and what it's about?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was doing my previous role, which was designing large scale, which is designing programs for large businesses, I was sometimes asked to provide facilitators, not often because I usually handed it over to the client. But I found that I could only manage one project at a time because they were very time consuming. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could find more people who did what I did that could act as associates for me and design in my style? So I opened up a Facebook group, and obviously I was active on LinkedIn trying to find people like me. So this was all rumbling along in the background. But then when the pandemic started, actually it was about 6 months before, to be fair, I thought I'm going to create a training designers club, a community, because I've got a little bit of a reputation for people saying, oh, Sheridan's written loads of stuff, she's got loads of exercises, she's got loads of ideas. And I would get regular requests saying, can I pick your brains? Could you just look over this? And being a generous sort, and the joy of actually speaking to somebody in my working day, I was like, yeah, of course, Karen, that's brilliant. So I was very happy to help people on an ad hoc basis. But then it started to become more regular, and my husband pointed out that I wasn't a charity because obviously, as I'm helping people, I'm not actually earning any money. But I thought, well, I can't charge somebody a huge amount of money for a 3-page questionnaire that I've designed or for a half-hour meeting, which is when I came up with the idea of the membership. So people pay a small monthly fee, and obviously the services have grown now. So we have weekly designer drop-ins where we get maybe 10 people on a call together to talk about what we're working on. We've got a growing resource bank, so things that people have put together, they'll share them with the group. I collect them, they're there on the website. We've had monthly lunch and learn sessions. We even have a coaches group now, coaches catch up. So they meet every month. So it's not just about designers. And the WhatsApp group is bonkers. I have to mute it. It's just crazy. There's 20, 30 messages every day. Has anybody got? Oh, I've been asked to do something on this. What do you recommend? And it's taken off, which is amazing. And I absolutely love it. So it is there to support particularly lone L&D people who just need that second pair of eyes. They want that sense check, they want that shortcut, and it's so satisfying.
Yeah, but I think also it's actually something obviously that lights you up and it gives you energy,
Yeah.
and that's important for you on as someone that's providing that service. But and we're going to come back to also what you mentioned about I can't charge that for this, because that's another thing that we talked about this briefly before we went live. So
I'm never going
it
to be rich.
well, there's always hope. But let's talk about what you see as your you've mentioned it and called it your zone of genius. So let's talk about what you see as your zone of genius.
So it's interesting because I enjoyed doing the bespoke design for large organisations. I mean, I did it for 16 years, so I wouldn't have done it if I didn't enjoy it. But then I was starting to just get a little bit, I've been here before, it's a little bit samey. But what I found I am really good at was being in those meetings with clients, listening to, and we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to cover this and this is changing. I was just brilliant, and I do say so myself, at seeing how that all fit together. So I could really see through the fog. I could very quickly put structure into things. I could connect the dots, and I love doing that as well. I get so much energy from that because I'll quite often sit in a meeting and somebody will be explaining something, and it's very rude of me, really. I'll just go, oh, and all these ideas would come flooding into my head. So that I am particularly good at, and I'm very responsive as well. So I will go to a meeting one day, I will let all these ideas percolate, and I will turn something around the next day or the day after, because the momentum really keeps me motivated. So a couple of years ago, I launched what I call my design Kickstarter service, which is individuals come to me and say, I've been asked to do this, or they want this, they want the other, da, 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 da. What can we do? I'll say, leave it with me, I'll send you an outline, and I'll do it the next day. Now, AI has taken over that a little bit, but of course, you have to know with AI, it is very much rubbish in, rubbish out. So you do have to be mindful of that. And sometimes a person is better. But I also I love connecting ideas. I love connecting people. I love, so the extroverted nature in me, I need to feel a part of something. So the Training Designers Club allows me to do all the things that I love, and the things that I'm good at as well. So it's a win-win.
That's very interesting, and we're going to dive into that when I share the 7-step model, and particularly about motivations. But I just want to come back to the value of training and how we assess the value, because ultimately there's no point in training anybody unless there's a reason, and so we've got to think about the value of that, isn't it? And I think when we are training, it's quite easy to fall into the trap that you've almost sort of alluded to there, with regards to, well, I can't charge that because that's only a PDF, which is 2 sides. But
Yeah.
actually, the PDF with 2 sides is far more valuable than a piece of paper and some writing on it, isn't it? So, and I think I see that as one of the biggest challenges with regards to trainers, is to actually really get their full value and realise it, with regards to firstly charging the right price, and also being in that position to be able to have that conversation with the person that's paying for the training. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And I'm sure it's something must come up a lot in your community.
It does. I mean, we don't focus on the business side of training because we have employed people and self-employed people. We focus on actually doing the work, I suppose. But I'm probably the wrong person to talk about pricing, to be honest, Mark, because I woefully underprice everything that I do. I don't know why. I think it was the way I was brought up. There's a lot of deep psychology going on there, but I'm getting better. And what we have to remember is it's not about the number of handouts, it's not about the number of slides, it's not about how long the course is. It's about the problem that solution solves.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as you say, in our community, the number of times people will come along and say, oh, my back's up against the wall. I wasn't sure I could come to this meeting, but you've just unlocked, you've overcome my obstacle and now I can go ahead. So that is worth so much. Um, just say, actually, you've now saved me a day of going around in circles. And if someone is freelance, that's saved them £800,000, so
Yeah.
it's worth every penny, really, when you think about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we do undervalue it. We undervalue it ourselves. Other people undervalue it. Um, and I wonder if that's because we cannot guarantee, because obviously every individual who participates in training is different. And some people will take that, it will land at the right time, in the right way, they will implement immediately, they will see huge benefits. Other people, for whatever reason, it doesn't land at the right time, or they aren't quite ready to receive that information yet. They maybe don't have the support in place. They don't implement it. They don't see. So it's very difficult to
Mm.
measure ROI. And believe me, I have tried. It's not impossible, but it is difficult.
Well, it's a little bit like speakers. When you go to watch someone speak,
Mm,
sometimes they just try to cram too much in, and you come away and you don't really know what their message is. And actually, it's the speakers that say maybe less, but about one topic, as opposed to little bits about lots of things. So I think when we talk about training, it's not about the amount of information you share. It's about the way you share it. That's key, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we all, whether they are stakeholders in your business, if you're employed, or whether they are clients, there is still this insistence a lot of the time that the more the better. I mean, we had a drop in, and I actually made it public on YouTube, which we don't normally record our drop ins. And one of our members said, I've been asked to do a half-day course on managing change, and she listed about 10 topics, and each topic on its own would have been half a day. And it's like, the client expects you to do that in half a day. It's going to have no impact, no matter how good she is. It's too much. It's just going to overwhelm people. So you're absolutely right. It's that one thing. What is the one thing, or those two or three things? And let's do them really well. Let's bring them to life. Let's cover them um, in an engaging way. So it's not just about information. We have to get the emotional buy-in as well. We have to get the skills practice. And you can't do that if you're giving somebody a 10-point slide presentation.
Yeah, one of the books that I read that really brought this home to me was The Jelly Effect. I can't remember the author, but it's, if you think about the jelly effect he was talking about was, if you keep throwing jelly at a window, then it's not gonna stick. It's just gonna fall down.
Yeah.
And it's like that. If you're a trainer just throwing information at people, it's just not gonna stick. It's just gonna sort of rebound or just fall on the floor. It's not actually going to actually resonate and actually be actioned and be worthwhile at the end of the day, and that's the key,
Yeah.
isn't it? And so overwhelm is one of the things that we have got to be aware of, and I think was one of the things that put most people off. I'm trying to learn the saxophone at the moment, and my biggest problem at the moment is overwhelm. I know there's things I've got to do, but there's so much to do. I don't know where to start, so I have to go back to basics and say, right, it's about blowing and all that sort of stuff. I won't bore you with any more details about saxophones, but
My sister is a saxophone teacher, believe it or not, and a saxophonist. So
yes.
she teaches people.
So the struggles. There is so much to learn, and you don't know quite where to start sometimes. Anyway, it comes to the point in the podcast where you can take a bit of a step back, sit back, Sheridan. I'm going to share bits and pieces about the 7-step model, particularly what we've learned here. As always, pretty much every podcast I mention the importance of understanding ourselves, and Sheridan has already shared that she did a motivational map, and she's happy for me to sort of share those top motivators and where they fit in with her business model, which I'm going to do shortly. But it's also important when we are thinking about a business is evaluating the impact of those motivators and where they fit in. And it's been mentioned a few times about the importance of understanding that we need to have revenue to have a business. But the problem is that I find this very much with a lot of trainers, a lot of coaches. They're not motivated by money, so they don't pay enough attention to it, and ultimately they don't charge enough, and ultimately they struggle to make money. It's always they're always sort of living from one invoice to the next sort of thing. So that's an issue that crops up a lot, and I haven't got a particular answer to it, but it's one of those things that affects a lot in this space, I know. And I think when we're talking about what Sheridan does, I think it's also interesting when we think about systemizing. I think when we have a training, when we introduce training into a business, it's got to be part of a systemized process rather than just throwing and trying to fix things when problems occur. I think training is important with regards to being a part of the system where we systematically train people with regards to the key skills that they need in the organisation. So let's just talk about motivation because I think this is really interesting. The motivator we've mentioned a couple of times is the builder motivator there, the drive for money. And so there is, in most cases, when we are doing something that we're passionate about and it's not money driven, we'll do it whatever the price sort of thing. And that's the trap we fall into, particularly if we're running our own business. So it can be our Achilles heel. So we need to make sure that we're aware of it and make sure that we're not undercharging. With regards to Sheridan's business in particular, she's got an interesting thing going on with her top motivators. So her top motivator is spirit. So she wants freedom to make her own choices and do the things that in the way that she wants to do them. But she's also got this friend here, which means that she wants to work with others. So spirit there's a tendency to be more independent and autonomous in the way you work. Friend is about working with others. But if you think about what we've been talking about here and the way that Sheridan has set up a business, yes, she has the independence to do the things that she wants to do, but she actually also has a community that she's set up. So communities actually work really well when you've got a high friend because you have that community that you belong to and you can lead that community and share also knowledge within that community. So when you have a membership or a community, whatever way you've set it up, you can actually work that with regards to your motivators. Friend being the one that probably stands out most with regards to a membership model, particularly. And so, if you think that you are particularly driven with belonging at work, and you're thinking about a model that might work for you, then maybe think about how a membership might work with regards to a knowledge based and then sharing that knowledge within that community. So, and not forgetting, not that it's the most important motivator, but this searcher motivator, which I don't often mention, but it's one that drives an awful lot of people, and I know Sheridan's in your top three, is making a difference. And when we are tuned into the things that do make our difference, that's when we really are in touch with our purpose, and we understand what gets us out of bed in the morning. And that is crucial, particularly when we are working for ourselves, because then we are tuned into the things that we need to make sure we're fulfilling with regards to making us feel that we're making a difference. And sometimes that can be quite tricky. And I've got a few clients that have struggled with that. But once they've unlocked it, it's made all the difference with regards to the direction that they've gone with their business. So there's a few bits and pieces that I've thought about as we've been discussing things. Any comments you've got to make about what I've said there, Sheridan?
It's really very accurate. I have to say, in that I love my job. I wake up, I think about it all the time. I am always full of new ideas. I have to rein myself in, and I think, as you say, the downside of running a community, which is I cannot express how much pleasure it gives me and how valued I feel and how accepted I feel, is that obviously these people are now my friends. And I think that's why the money is always going to be an issue, because we like to do favours for our friends, don't we?
Yes. Do you want to give us a bit more background of how you did actually set it up? You know, the actual systems you put in place with regards to how do you go about setting up a membership?
So very quickly, because I know we're short on time. I mean, it's interesting because I wasn't particularly systemized, but you have to be when you're doing something like this. And my good friend, if I may give her a name check, Bex McNeil, has helped me so much in the background. So we started off with a Facebook group, a website, and a way to allow people to pay me. So she set up Stripe for me, and it was really very simple. But then we use Active Campaign, which is I'm in active campaign every single day. So I send out updates to my members every week. Obviously, people who are on the mailing list, let them know what's happening. So active campaign allows me to do that. And it also triggers a number of automations. So if somebody buys one of our pay-as-you-go events or one of my resources, enrolls on one of the courses, or joins the membership, obviously that kicks in an automated sequence, so that I'm not having to keep on top of that all the time. But you still have to make sure that all the links work and it's still appropriate and things, this, that, and the other. And I switched last year my website from WordPress to something called Newzenler, which is just a little bit easier to allow, because people who are VIP members get access to some things, and people who aren't VIP members don't get access to them, or they get access to different things or different prices. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but my membership is a community-based membership. And we now have WhatsApp as well. So a lot of people said they didn't really like Facebook. So we went to WhatsApp, which was the best decision ever, but it's also absolutely bonkers. So,
Right.
so lots of
Okay.
different things in play, lots of different things that you have to maintain and stay on top of.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that some people might be sort of thinking, well, it sounds like an interesting way to run a business, but not quite sure how I'd go about it. So you've alluded to a few things there, and tech as a role to play. Sheridan, as you mentioned, time is run away from with us, as it does in these podcasts. 30 minutes just flies by. Thank you for your time today. It's been really interesting to catch up with you and find out how you're doing, and also discuss the importance of training and how training design is the fundamentals to your business.
Likewise, thanks very much, Mark.
Right, so there we are. Thank you to Sheridan for joining us today. If you've got some challenges with regards to training design, then you know where to go. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to help you out, and a membership sounds like a great option if you are in that sort of space with regards to sharing your knowledge with others, and likewise learning from others at the same time. Right, just a quick mention of the book again. Book, like I mentioned, the 7-step process, which is there's a chapter for each of the 7 steps in the book, and there's also 2 other bonus. They're the first 2 chapters actually, because there's those 2 chapters about looking after yourself and also about enjoying the journey. So they're not part of the 7-step process, but they're just equally important. So they're the first 2 chapters in the 9 chapters in the book. If you'd like to contribute to the podcast, then feel free to do that. We'd love to have your input, and also your contributions make a big difference to keeping the wheels turning in the podcast. And as I mentioned, if you buy 2 coffees, then I will send you a copy of my book. Right, thank you for again to join us if you joined us live, and if you catch us on replay anywhere, then feel free to leave me or Sheridan a message. If there's any questions that come up, then feel free to do that. But until the next episode, take care, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.